feeds the soul and food feeds the heart. So please join us for season 2 of Brunch with a Black Man, where we sit down with Black men from across the world who talk about their experiences with mental health, mental wellness, and how they are taking on their own mental health journey. We sit down over brunch to break it down. Make sure you join us for season 2 of Brunch with a Black Man. Hello and welcome to another edition of Brunch with the Black Man with our special guest, Jake Wheatley. Jake, how are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. I'm good.
You're hanging in there?
Yeah.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to have some conversation, eat some good food, and then you'll be on your way to go about your day, okay?
That worked for me.
So we're here on Brunch with the Black Man because we like to have conversations about Black men's experiences with mental health. And so I know you said mental health is one of your passions, and it's something that you've advocated for because you have your own, you said affliction, but we're going to say connection to mental health. So before we get into that, can you just talk a little bit about how you grew up? What was like little Jake like?
Well, I grew up in Detroit, born and raised in Detroit. And I come from a typical family, mom and dad, middle class, working class family household. I have 4 sisters, and it was like I said, it was normal for me. It was a normal household. Of course, we went through our struggles, trying to make things happen and do what it does. And I was one of those kids who always wanted to experience new things, challenging things. So even though I had a household that had a mom and dad, the streets was always very much appealing to me. So thank you. What type of sandwich is this? All right, that's what's up.
Yeah. That's good. So we're gonna feed you, right?
I'm with that, and so once my mom and dad separated, which when I was probably like around 12 or 13, I followed my mom, and that helped me see a different type of world. Growing up in a household with just a mom in the household, being a young African American male, especially in a city like Detroit, you experience something different, and not probably any much different than Pittsburgh, but Detroit is just
different.
It's different,
So your parents separate, you're with your mom. Who's like guiding you? Who's talking to you? Who's like introducing you to music and hip hop and like all the things of the world?
Yeah, I grew up on a street called Montlou and Van Dyke. So, in Detroit, it's east side, west side, northwest, southwest, so on and so forth. So I had a next door neighbor who was like a big brother to me. And he kind of helped me experience, music, experience kind of like life. And I kind of really looked to him to help me, guide me. And of course, when you do that, you get experience positive and negative. So that led me into a whole bunch of different, realities. For me, I was always kind of like a kid who was, I was curious. I was always dipping and dabbing and this and that. And he was, I'm like 13, 14. He was probably 16, 17. So I followed him around a lot. And we had our own little Montlou players, like was our like little tagline for the young boys who was on the street. And he got me really interested in a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead and eat. And so
yeah, I was looking for some tacos. They gave me a sandwich. So, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This might be the mayor's brisket.
But we'll keep it going, and we'll get you something else in a second.
I got you.
But you're talking about, you're ripping and running, you're learning, and so you're getting curious. So you're getting a little bit of trouble.
I got a lot of trouble.
A lot of trouble.
Yeah, a lot of trouble because I'm one of them personalities that I just can't put a toe in it. I really like to dive all the way in, and so I was always good with my hands. And being that I was the only boy in the household, and like I said, I had this neighbor who was really like my mentor. So he would set me up with like little missions, like if he had a problem with somebody, I would be the person who would he would bang, he would have me try to handle stuff for him. And I would think that that's the way to get love, and my reputation, because on the, again, growing up in a household with a whole bunch of women, you have to be more, at least I thought I had to be more masculine, more aggressive, and, for people not to mess with me as much. And I took my L's, of course, but, that was really what my thing was. And, he used that to his benefit, So, yeah, I got in a lot of trouble.
You get in trouble. And so you're trying to like figure it out. At the same time, music's coming out. Do you remember the first time you heard like a hip hop song?
Yeah, The Show.
So
The Show and Lottie Dottie. They were on the same album. That was my real, like I was, really, of course, Rapper's Delight was out. I was 71's kid, so Rapper's Delight, hip hop was coming to age, that type of stuff. But The Show was the one, was really one of the songs that really kick-started me in the hip hop joint.
The learning hip hop. When's the first time you had a thought of like, I may have something going on. I may be stressed out. I may need to have a little more discipline that maybe like the military could give me.
I mean, so again, I'm living with my mom, and she worked as in Detroit. Of course, everything is geared around the plants, the car automobile plants, and they had her going to Minnesota. So I ended up finishing high school in Minnesota because my senior year was in Minnesota, and of course, Minnesota is definitely different than Detroit. I went from a city that was 90% African American to a city in Brooklyn Park that was 95% Nordic white people. You know what I'm saying? So, and I was in a high school with over 2,000 students and only 20 African Americans. So, I really had a full range of the dynamics of race. But anyway, in this, I was in a program called Inroads because even though I was mischievous, I was smart, or at least, I didn't have to, study as much. And so Inroads was for these supposed, kids who had some academic abilities, especially African Americans. And I got accepted into this college program, but every summer, like the summer before, they would send you to a university and study for whatever is going to happen next year. Long story short, I was in this program after high school, St. Cloud State, which is northern Minnesota, like further north, where the Eskimos are, you know what I mean? And my mother was just so happy that I was doing something positive. But we come from a household where, I'm one of the first ones to be on the college campus in my family. And she didn't really have the abilities to really, support me. So I ended up dropping out of that program. And when I came back, my mother was like, yo, you can't just live here without doing something. You know what I mean? She was like, you got to go get a job, or, you got to do something. You got to go to school, something. And while she was going through this, I don't know if you know the movie Boys in the Hood.
Mm-hmm.
So on that, I was like that guy on that Boys in the Hood. While she was in my ear with this story, I'm watching the commercial, and the Marine Corps commercial comes on. It got the, take you around the world, give you money for college, that whole thing. So she's in my ear screaming, basically, like, I got to do something with my life. I'm calling the 1-800 number, and the recruiter's like, come down and take the ASVAB test. So I come down there, and the ASVAB is like the test for seeing what your aptitude is for the military. So I come down there, and the dude tells me, I took the test. He was like, oh, what do you want to be? He said, you can be anything in here. I was like, maybe communications. I'm thinking I'm going to be somewhere typing and stuff like that, And he's like, okay, he signs me up. He was like, how many years you want to, sign up? And originally I was like, how many years to retire? He's like 20. I said, I want to sign up for 20. He said, let's start with 4, right? So I did that all on the humbug. And when I got to boot camp, I was thinking to myself, like, what the hell did I just do? And anyway, that's how I ended up doing it. It was just on the humbug. I just didn't want to keep hearing my mom's mouth about doing something.
So, like, what was that experience like? Because you're like in Detroit, with your family, separate, you're still in Detroit. Now you're in Minneapolis. You go there, and then totally different race dynamics. But now you're in this branch of government that is very strict, very disciplined, AM to PM. There is no structure, and you can't really be out here fighting unrestricted. So you're having to navigate new ways of making connection. Like, how was that for you?
Oh, it got even worse. I made it through only because my dad, when I signed up, my dad was like, "Yo, you're not disciplined enough to even make this." He's like, "You're gonna end up in jail." And I was like, "Nah, I'm gonna do it in spite." I was doing it in spite of him because I didn't want to fail because he said I was gonna fail. So but it was a struggle for me in the beginning because I was so undisciplined. And the Marine Corps is definitely about discipline. So I banged my head a lot, you know what I mean? But I got through because I had it's interesting. I had this one lieutenant when I went to the first Persian Gulf War, and I was refusing to do stuff he was a good person for me at the time because my MOS in the Marine Corps was a field radio operator. I was attached to an artillery unit. And my job was to go out with they call them forward observer, and go in front and put eyes on a target. And then that's how they know where to shoot the target. And so it was just me and this lieutenant. And and one night he asked me he didn't ask me, but someone asked me to stand guard. And I was like, that's not my job. My job is to watch the radio. So I'm not standing guard. So I was refusing to stand guard. And now anybody who knows anything about the military, when you refuse an order, especially in time of war, technically they could imprison you right then, or if you were too much of a dangerment, they can actually shoot you because you become a dangerment to the mission, right? So word got back to the lieutenant because I was refusing, making a big scene about it. The word got back to this lieutenant, and he came out. He said, "Let me talk to him." So he took me aside, and he was like, "Look, man," he said, "I know you ain't supposed to do that. Like your technical job is to watch the radio, but I want you to do the guard for me." And I was like, that ain't my job. I was telling him that's not my job. He was like, he said, I'm not going to push you on it. He said, but do me a favor. He said, do this for me. And he gave me 2 books. And he really changed my life. This is the guy who really changed my life. He gave me 2 books. The first one was The Art of War. And the second one was the autobiography of Malcolm X. It was the first time. Now, I told you I grew up in a city that was 90% African American. I had never really been exposed to like my history from that perspective. You know what I'm saying? And I read those books during that time, and it changed my direction. Those 2 books changed my direction.
And so you're reading The Art of War in the time of war. You experience some things while you're there, and you end up with some diagnoses.
Yeah.
Like, what was that process like?
I didn't get diagnosed in there though.
Okay.
Because actually, I ended up in that war, it damaged part of my lungs because during that war they was burning oil fields, and I told you I was a war observer. So the war only lasted three days for real, for the actual war. But as we were going through the oil fields and stuff, my lungs got damaged. So when I came back, I got an honorable discharge because of the physical damages to my lung. It wasn't until years later that I was getting into trouble, and I actually got into this really bad situation that I realized that I was also I had mental and behavior. I should have known that I had issues with authority, but I had other issues that was undiagnosed to me that came out later that helped me understand what I was going through.
So you're going through stuff. You're physically damaged with your lung. You're getting into trouble. You get a diagnosis, and in trying to find yourself, you find yourself in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
A new city. Yeah. You're able to start over. what was that process like for you to come to a new place with all of these experiences, but also understanding you're going to have like these mental health challenges?
Yeah. Again, I didn't realize my mental health situation until like literally 10 years ago. So I was in Pittsburgh, not really understanding my mental health stuff. Um, but I loved Pittsburgh when I got here. Again, I came here because of a person I met in undergrad. I went to A&T, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University,
Mm-hmm.
the greatest HBCU in the world. And I met someone there who was from Pittsburgh, and I was trying to convince her to go to Arizona because I always wanted to go out west because who know about black people in the west? I want to go west. I was tired of being in urban areas. I wanted to go and be free, for real. And she was a typical Pittsburgher because her family was here and her sister was getting married. She's like, I need to go home to help my sister. So we ended up coming here, and our plan was just to be here a couple of years and then leave. But when I got to Pittsburgh, I loved the city. Like literally, people were telling me, I moved into the Hill District when I first came because that's where she was from. And they were saying, oh, Hill District is, a rough neighborhood, and don't go here, don't go there. And I come from a city where, the rough neighborhoods don't have green grass and they only have one ways in and one way out. Pittsburgh had green grass and it had friendly people, and the Hill was one of those areas where everybody, when they saw me, they was like saying hi. I fell in love with the city. I was like, yo, this is where I'm gonna be. You know what I'm saying? So I just tried to make a way. You know what I mean? Like in 30 years later, still making a way.
So you're making a way. You end up running for office.
Yeah.
You said you run into some trouble.
Yeah.
You get good and the bad from like the media.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate just like staying calm and just like being yourself under the spotlight?
Well, because I've been in so many situations where the stuff that people are saying on the media is like, that ain't nothing. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's life or death. It's just people talking. So that was never an issue for me. And to be honest, I never wanted to be an elected official. My dream job is what I'm doing now. Like I went to school to be a public administrator, like to work for an elected official to do something. You know what I mean? I was never one of those people who wanted to be in front of a camera or doing this type of stuff. That's never my personality. And so, but I did that because for real, I was working with a group of young people who were, I was a coordinator for a program called Coral. And one of the first programs they were doing was a group of young African Americans, college students, and it was trying to figure out a way to keep these young people here in Pittsburgh. And we were trying to network them so that they felt like they had a network here that when they graduated from wherever they were from, wherever they were going, Atlanta or because we were losing a lot. We were losing them. And so my job was to try to network them. And in that program, they were always challenging me about like, what are you going to do to make the city? Because they felt like the city really wasn't reflective of them. And so I was trying to challenge them to stay here. And they were saying, what are you going to do to help us stay here? And I really ran the first time to show them, you don't have to wait for somebody else to do it for you. You can do it. I was literally barely a resident of this city. Like you had to be a resident for a period of years to be considered a state resident. And I was barely that because I was here for graduate school, but I hadn't really established myself as a resident when I ran. And I ran against a person who was an incumbent. And so at first I didn't really think I was going to win. I just wanted to make a statement. When I talked to the individual who was there, he kind of challenged me, because I wasn't even sure I was going to run. And he kind of challenged me to run. So that's how I ended up doing it. But I learned a lot during that campaign. And again, to your point about how I keep it together, I kept it together. It was like, it was never a big deal for me. Like, because people were talking about my past. He brought up my past, because I had a record and he brought the record up. People challenged me because at that time, I always tell them I wasn't as refined as I am now. I was rough around the edges. I was still walking around, barely had a tie, and that type of stuff. I'm a young person trying to trying to make my way. So I didn't have resources like other people. And so, but I never let that wear me down. You know what I mean? Like I used that as motivation, and not like an anchor. It was like a elevation. Like, for me, it was like, okay, I come from nothing, but I'm gonna get something.
And get something you did. And so you talked about you got your diagnosis about like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What was that process like for you? Because like some people, you go through life, you understand stuff that's happening. Maybe you're not reacting normally. Maybe we're not reacting right. That's like all you know, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have someone, who's saying, hey, you're acting like this because of this reason.
Yeah.
How did you feel in that moment?
It was hard for me to accept because as an independent person who all their lives like thought of themselves as like this, like this solid, invincible thing, to hear that something is wrong, like the way I took it was like somebody was telling me something was wrong with me. Now, as I matured in this, I know it wasn't because something is wrong with me. It's just my circumstances and figuring out ways to deal with my circumstances. But I have to give credit to my significant other, my partner, because it was her who pushed me to really like, hey, this ain't normal. You know what I'm saying? Like what you keep experiencing. I was angry all the time for no reason, waking up mad. You know what I mean? Like, and can't really deal with people. Like, people challenge my thoughts. It was like, yo, I'm thinking like they just slapped my mother or something. You know what I mean? Like so it was like, she was like, this just ain't that ain't normal. You know what I mean? Like, and so she really challenged me to kind of like go, try to figure that out and put me on the course. And then when I did that, and I started realizing that, it was other stuff that was impacting me. You know what I mean? Childhood, it was, stressors, it was, just stuff that I had not unresolved traumas that I had not focused on and addressed. And then once I started doing it, I was like, I'm comfortable. I'm like, hey, I'm getting better at it. You know what I'm saying? Now, every day is a struggle.
Every day is a struggle.
But I know what it is.
You've been kind of open about like your mental health issues. What has been like the best thing for you to learn, like how to engage like your anger, like and your feelings? Because again, like sometimes the people are talking about you, or even if they're just disagreeing, like, oh, they're coming at me, like you want to squabble up or no, right? And that's not, like you said, it's not normal. So how have you learned to like manage and process those reactions?
Yeah, I've gotten better at pausing, and like music is good for me too. I working out is good for me. I run a lot because running and working out gives me a chance to really pause and take a broader look at everything. So I that is really helpful for me. But yeah, I had to really dig into like, coming into a space where I created my own safe spaces. When things hit me all at once, sometimes I have to really pause and move myself out and then come back in. Because if I don't do that, it gets weird.
It gets tricky. And you've also you said, I'm on this journey, but I'm not going to leave it by myself. I'm going to bring like other people in. Yeah. What inspired you to say, if I'm going through this, probably some other people my age are going through this, and like we gotta take our mental health seriously?
I don't know if it was any broad thing. I just said, I'm not gonna be embarrassed of who and what I am. I mean, it's what I am, and I should talk about it just because I don't want other people to look at it like when I first was looking at it. I was looking at it as like, I don't want nobody to know. You know what I'm saying? And I'm scared of somebody know about this, then they might not want to mess with me, or they may be, it would hurt me professionally or something. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, I am who I am. So I gotta love me if nobody else loves me. And then, I'm gonna talk about it freely because I think a lot of men and women, especially Black men and women and people from real traumatized situations, we go through life trying to, overcorrect the things that we really didn't have no control, and we really didn't. The onus wasn't on us. It was things that we had to deal with, and our mechanism for dealing with it got us acting a certain way. And so we should just be honest with it and face it.
And facing it. And what has been one of the things that has surprised you as you've been like facing your past, your childhood, your trauma? What has surprised you the most?
I'm gonna tell you, like, I'm not a big communicator. Like, although I tell people I'm a great communicator, I still think well, let me back up. I am a great communicator when I want to be.
Okay.
But the person that I couldn't really communicate a lot with was my mom, because me and my mom were very tight. And we are today, but a lot of what I had to face really was stemming from, I think her trauma that I took on with her, right? And so what I was proud of is, when I came to this realization that, I was going to take this journey, I had to have this real conversation with her. And she's like me, like she don't want to hear her kid say nothing to her that is not saying that she's perfect. And I had to really learn how to really have this conversation with her without offending her. And when I finally got to that stage where I had that courage to do that, I was proud of that, because we were able to really together break through. And even she started her own journey, like reflecting on her own journey with all of us as her children and stuff like that. And I think it helped all of us as a family.
I always say it's always hard to raise your parents. It's always hard to be like, I'm an adult too, and now we have to have adult conversations. Yeah. But I do think that there is healing and understanding that, like, you're both human and you're both making mistakes, but you're also able to still grow and still move on from that. Yeah. And so I really want to thank you so much for sitting down on this episode of Brunch with a Black Man. It was painless, right?
It was painless.
It was painless.
Yeah.
We got through it, and I hope we get to help a bunch of people with your story. So Jake Wheatley, thank you so much for joining us for Brunch with a Black Man.
Thank you.